There comes a point in time in every racing driver's career where they simply just have to accept that they're not as good as they used to be. And this is a bit of a major talking point at this moment in time, particularly with one driver on the grid. And it just happens to be the most successful driver in Formula 1 history. Lewis Hamilton has literally done it all. He has absolutely nothing left to prove. He's broken all the records, achieved more success than he ever expected to. So his legacy both on and off the track is absolutely secure. So no one would begrudge him if he ever decided to call it a day. But the thing is that Lewis has absolutely no sign of calling it a day, just yet anyway. And nothing made his intentions more clear that he wanted to race into his 40s in Formula 1 than when he made the announcement that he would be joining Ferrari at the start of this year. Even all of these months on from when the announcement was first made back in February, there's still, I feel, a real buzz about this move, that this is actually happening. It's still difficult to comprehend actually that this will be happening. Hamilton will be wearing the red overalls next year when he makes the move from Mercedes to Ferrari. And I think it's quite poetic in a way that we've got the most successful driver in F1 history joining the team who is the most successful in F1 history, joining forces to end their respective periods without success. Now, of course, Lewis hasn't been without types of success as long as Ferrari has. Ferrari last won the championship back in 2008, and Hamilton, obviously, his most recent championship, his 7th World Championship, came in 2020. But given how he lost his most recent title shot in 2021 to Max Verstappen, I think that the pain of not winning still hurts. So that means that the desire and the hunger to win again burns even brighter. But while Lewis absolutely deserves the credit, the fact that he's still hungry and he's still motivated to carry on and be a success and win another championship, I think when he makes the move to Ferrari next year, he could be in for the toughest test of his career so far. And he's already had some tough tests to overcome during his career, going up against Fernando Alonso in his rookie season, for example. But this test in particular is one that I think he really should be worried about, because if it doesn't go his way, he could end up being humiliated. It could end in humiliation. And that test that I'm talking about is Charles Leclerc, Ferrari's favourite son, who has been at the team since 2019. And ever since that he stepped into a Formula 1 car for Sauber back in 2018, he has been tipped to be a future world champion. Leclerc, for me, is having one of his strongest seasons in Formula 1. This year he's managed to score 3 victories, which is his equal best with 2022. He's had 3 pole positions, and he currently sits 3rd in the World Championship, only behind Max Verstappen and Lando Norris. But it's not just those stats, it's also the fact that once again he has been the lead Ferrari. Although you'd have to say that at the start of the season, Carlos Sainz did have the upper hand on him. He won in Australia, he had a really strong start to the season where he's often finishing on the podium. But really since, I would say, China, Charles has had the upper hand on Sainz more often than not, and he's been the one that's bringing home the results consistently. If you look at his results this year, Leclerc has been often consistently finishing in the top 5 at most of the Grand Prix in 2024. The only real blip that he had was between Canada and Silverstone, where out of a possible 112 points, he only scored 12. If we took that poor run out of the equation, though, I think it would be difficult to argue that Leclerc wouldn't be closer to Verstappen in the championship than Norris is currently. And I get the feeling that we wouldn't be talking about Max having the possibility to wrap up the championship in Vegas, which is the next race, if Leclerc hadn't gone through that difficult middle part of the season. This is why I don't think I'm alone in thinking that Lewis really is in for the biggest challenge of his career so far when he joins Ferrari in 2025. Especially when you look at his results compared to Charles, it doesn't really make for good reading. Ironically, if you break down both Hamilton and Leclerc's respective seasons, neither of them peaked at the same time. It seemed that when one was struggling, the other was thriving. For example, when Lewis has struggled, Leclerc has been the one that's been fighting for regular podiums and victories and has looked very competitive. Whereas on the other hand, when Hamilton was going through his purple patch during the middle of the season, when he won at Silverstone and he won at Spa, it was Leclerc this time that was struggling and Ferrari going through a bit of a difficult patch. But overall, compared to Charles, Lewis really has endured a tough season, probably one of his toughest actually. It's just where he always seems to be complaining about how the car feels underneath him. He's always complaining about the lack of grip, the lack of balance. He just doesn't seem to be at one with this car. I actually don't think he's been satisfied with how the car has felt all year long, even though, as I mentioned, we did go through that mid-season resurgence where for 4 or 5 races he looked really competitive. And in fact, Lewis mentioned recently that he feels that this current Mercedes, the W15, is actually the worst car that he's ever driven in Formula 1. But aside from the fact that Lewis clearly hasn't got on well with this car, he doesn't seem to gel with it, he can't extract the maximum performance from it, he will also be the first one to admit when his performances have not been up to scratch this year. And certainly at times this season they have not been up to the standards that we expect from a 7-time world champion especially in qualifying. When I was looking back through Lewis's results this season, it's actually easy to forget that he had such a difficult start to the season, to the point where he actually didn't finish on the podium until the 10th round, which was the Spanish Grand Prix, which seems unfathomable that he's had such a difficult start to this campaign. He actually only finished in the top 4 once in those opening 9 races, which was in Canada. So up to that point, it really had been the worst ever start that he'd ever made to a Formula 1 season since he made his debut in 2007, which, when you consider how difficult 2009 was, particularly in the first half of the season, when McLaren obviously didn't get off to the best start in the new era of regulations that came in for that year, to the point where actually mid-season, where they decided to change the car completely just to try and boost their competitiveness, where they could actually fight at the front of the grid. So digging deeper into those qualifying statistics for this season, Hamilton has literally been hammered in qualifying by Russell this season. He's only managed to out-qualify Russell at 5 Grand Prix so far this year, and we've done 21 Grand Prix so far as we speak. And he's only managed to qualify on the front row once, which was at Silverstone. I think for me it has been pretty noticeable about how Hamilton's one-lap pace has dipped. And I don't think that's just been the problem this season. I think actually this has been sort of bubbling away since 2022, I would say, because that was obviously the start of these current generation of cars, and Hamilton really hasn't gelled with these era of cars, certainly compared to the last generation of cars from 2017 to 2021. And during that season in 2022, he only just edged Russell in the qualifying head-to-head. And then the following year in 2023, they were tied at 11 apiece over the season. Now, maybe it isn't too much of a surprise that Hamilton really has been pushed hard by Russell, particularly over one lap, because we know just how much of a qualifying specialist Russell is. On a Saturday, he has been exceptional, particularly when you look at his 3 years at Williams. The fact that he always dragged that car through to Q2 and sometimes Q3. His front row start, for example, at Spa in 2021, where it really was a lap out of the gods. It was an exceptional performance that day. But what's worrying for Lewis, I think, is that he's now going to be going up against Charles, who is even more of a qualifying specialist than Russell is. For me, he is currently the fastest driver, the best driver over one lap on the current grid. And if this trend continues next season, then I think Hamilton could literally be humiliated by Leclerc. The only blessing in disguise for Lewis is that his racecraft is still as sharp as ever, and I would say it's still one of his greatest strengths. He's still quick on a Sunday, even if he has lost one lap pace on the Saturday. And that's even though, if you look at the head-to-head battle against Russell in terms of race finishes, Russell has finished ahead of Hamilton more often than not. Russell has finished ahead of Hamilton at 13 of the 21 Grand Prix, whereas Hamilton has only finished ahead of Russell at 8 of them. But then again, even though he's behind Russell in this metric, you only have to look at his win at Silverstone earlier this season, when he capitalised on the switch to dry tyres at exactly the right moment, jumped ahead of his younger rivals and went on to win the race. And then if you look at his pace at Spa, how he led that Grand Prix with ease. Certainly in the first stint, he was clearly faster than everyone else. His race pace looked really strong. And it was only because Russell took a gamble on strategy, deciding to do a one-stop compared to everyone else who was doing a two-stop, that he beat him on track before obviously he was disqualified. And Hamilton obviously inherited that win, but it was a win that he deserved. Okay, there has also been some shoddy weekends from Lewis this season where he's looked completely at sea and just not at the races. I mean, you only have to look at Austin, where he qualified on the back row on merit. That wasn't a fluke. He didn't get held up by a yellow flag, or there wasn't a red flag that was badly timed. He was 19th on pure pace, which was obviously a shock. And then the last race in Brazil, he just never looked comfortable in the car from Friday onwards. I think it was one of, if not his worst ever weekend in Formula 1, just from a performance point of view. In the sprint, he was stuck in the middle of the pack and he just could not make any progress. Then in qualifying, again, he failed to make it into the top 10. And then on race day, he only could make his way up to 10th place to just score the 1 point. Looking round at the reports that are going round at the minute, many are already writing off Lewis even before he's turned a wheel at Ferrari. And he's still got another 3 races to do at Mercedes. I've seen the words used of past his prime and that he should retire. Ultimately, for me, I don't think I'm going to be judging Lewis until he's done at least 5 races for Ferrari next season. Then we'll really have an understanding of whether we've got the Lewis of pre-22 back, or it is confirmed that he has lost what truly made him great. I personally have a feeling that this move that Lewis is making to Ferrari will actually re-energise his career, and a change in scenery will actually have a positive impact on him. And who knows, maybe next year's Ferrari will actually suit his driving style more than this year's Mercedes, where he can extract more performance out of the car and ultimately get more out of himself. Only time's going to tell. But nevertheless, I do stand by the fact that Lewis should be wary of going up against a driver of Leclerc's calibre, because I think it really could be a make or break situation for him in his career. So there you go, that's it for today's video. Don't forget to hit the like button on this video, and if you are new around here, also subscribe to the channel. Thanks for watching guys, and I will see you in the next one. Goodbye.